AI is eating the world. At least that's what it feels like. Feels like every business process, every strategic plan, everything that we're doing needs to be reevaluated in the context of AI, which is why we're bringing you this fresh AI briefing today, where we hope to discuss the potential of AI and some pitfalls, the ways to use AI and maybe some ways not to, and what Fresh is doing with AI now and where we are headed in the future. The potential with AI is unimaginable. And I mean that in every sense of the word, that we cannot literally imagine all the ways in which AI is going to change things. The technology is changing too fast. There are too many dimensions. Too many things are unfolding in real time. We have dozens of new technologies, dozens of new companies, dozens of models. Which one do we choose? Which strategy is best? Do we build? Do we buy? Do we fine tune? How much is it going to cost? What are the legal ramifications? What is safe and what isn't? Is there reputational risk? This is the world that we're stepping into, a paradox of choice. The potential is real. There's definitely gold in them there hills. And so Fresh is taking a prospecting strategy. We are sending out our prospectors to evaluate the value propositions in different problem domains. And when we find something, we drill down into it. Now, there is an AI gold rush unfolding right now. And so you have virtual AI boom towns. And in a boom town environment, we do need to be a little bit cautious. Any problem which appears to fix everything is probably being oversold. When you see a demo, you're probably only seeing the happy path demo and not all the complexity that it took to get the demo to that state. Nobody has a very long track record. It takes a long time to grow an old friend. Sorting out what are the pragmatic solutions from the pipe dreams is going to be one of the challenges of the coming years. So we're standing at a transition point in our market. We need to explore AI. We need to understand the value it can bring, but it's unnerving to be one of the ones that goes first. So do we want to go second? Do we don't want to go last? How much is it going to cost? What is it going to save? Are we sure that it's going to be stable and predictable? We have a ton of tough questions, and every option seems to involve a trade-off. At Fresh, we're forging ahead. We feel there's tremendous value in to be unlocked with AI. I can tell you that AI has already changed the way my life works. We had to transition a Java project from Maven to Gradle, both widely used systems that the AIs are familiar with, and it was able to coach me through it in a much faster speed than it would have taken me if I had to learn everything from scratch. Somebody handed me a paragraph on a piece of paper the other day, and I took a picture of it, handed it to AI to convert it to text, and then asked it to provide some feedback on the grammar and the spelling, and it did all of that for me. That's pretty awesome. AI has a lot of strengths, but we want to be careful that we're not trying to mash a square peg into a round hole. One of the strengths of AI is solving problems where there is a lot of data, for instance. So if the problem domain you're in has a lot of data, AI may be able to solve that problem for you. If it doesn't, you may end up struggling mightily. Let me give you a bit of an example here. If I have a challenge of writing a calculator, well, this is a well understood problem, and a regular programmer can solve this problem quite quickly, whereas an AI can struggle mightily with simple arithmetic. It's counterintuitive, but you take all that computational power and you have to wrestle it just to get it to do basic addition properly. Now they're getting better at it, but that's still the effort model is enormous. Whereas if I take the image on the right and I say ask a traditional developer to count the number of objects in that picture, that developer is going to struggle mightily to solve that problem. Whereas if I have a database of pictures with their object counts, I can feed that to AI, train a model, and it can answer that question for me much more effectively and quickly than a traditional programming approach would solve. So the question for you is, which kind of problem do you have? Do I have a fuzzy problem with a lot of data behind it, or do I have a crisp set of rules which are easily implemented, in which case I might take a different approach? Another aspect to understand is that the G in the chat GPT is generative, which means it's creating stuff for you, which is fantastic. It's one of the value propositions. It created the image of the lemmings from a few slides back for me. However, there's a certain precision that may not be there when you're generating something from scratch. So if we go back to that slide, we can see that our lemmings are not all anatomically correct. If you look at the bottom left, that lemming's missing a nose. And if you look around the middle, one of them is missing an eyeball. And in the distance, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of geography and how mountains reach plains. Now, for the purpose of a PowerPoint slide, these things don't matter, right? It's AI solved this problem for me. It increased the comedic quality of this presentation in a way that would have cost me too much to bother with in a previous world. So we do have to understand which problems we're trying to solve and what's the right tool for the job. This randomness and generative ability of AI is a feature, and in some contexts we don't want randomness, and in those contexts we may want to have either a traditional solution or a mixture where we have AI generating part of the solution and some checks and balances around it. We need to make forward progress, but we need to not get tripped up by the hurdles of using AI. So, what are the hurdles of AI? One of them is that scaling AI can be trickier than you might think. Just because something works for a few lines of code for a simple program doesn't mean it's going to scale to large volumes. If you think of it in terms of a personal assistant may save you 20% of your time. Does that mean that five personal assistants can replace you altogether? No, it doesn't work that way, right? If you have two copies of a book, you can't read it twice as fast. So there's certain things that AI does well, and it does it very well, but that doesn't mean it can scale well. So in the case of a subdivision, it can generate all these houses for me, but what's it going to do when it tries to connect all those houses? And in our experiments, what we find is a number of things. It will generate a full interchange for every house. Well, now you've got a problem of disentangling that from your result and trying to make it all fit together. Or else it might just ignore the fact that houses need driveways. Or it might just put in a note that says, by the way, you should have some highways. None of those is very helpful in this situation. The other thing is that AI won't solve a problem that it can't see. So if there are things that your code or your application needs, but that are not obvious in the problem statement, AI won't know to inject them. So in the case of a city, there's a power grid, there's a power station somewhere. That's not obvious when you're looking at designing houses, but it's a critical component to having your system work. The other item to keep in mind is that if you expect to get the same result in perfect consistency, you're not going to get that generally from AI. Or if you do, you may need to put in a surprising amount of effort to constrain the AI. And this comes back to what we said before. It's a generative technology. That's part of the feature is that it's creative. We're all familiar with the hallucination problem. Sometimes what you get back from an AI looks almost correct until you either zoom out or maybe until you zoom in. So AI is pretty good at giving answers that look good, but upon further examination, they have some details that need to be followed up. Now, this can still be great, right? It may solve 80% of a problem for you, and then you just work on the last 20%. Another challenge that AIs have is the context size. They can only think about so many things at the same time. At Fresh, we're taking a number of strategies to try to maximize the value that we can get from AI technologies while minimizing the challenges or overcoming the challenges. We're grabbing the low-hanging fruit for starters. Our developers are using GitHub Copilots to accelerate their development. We're using AI to generate field names for tables. That might seem like a small thing, but in programming, names are kind of important, and sometimes programmers can get caught in an analysis paralysis, whereas a generative solution like AI can give you 30 options to pick from, and that can sort of get you moving more quickly. We are working on test case generation, test case transformation as we move from one platform to another. So there's a lot of different ways we can deploy AI and extract value already, and we are exploring more ways to do that. In the process, we've taken a strategy of picking horses, but being ready to switch. An example of this is in the open source model space. We initially were leaning heavily on the Llama models, and now we see there's a new family of models out there called Mistral, which is a better solution. to the problem, a better fit for the problems that we have. Another case, we're looking at ChatGPT 4 as our key closed source model, but there's Gemini and there's Claude, which are out there and have significant potential. So we may need to switch to them at some point as well. Another strategy we're taking is that we're trying to chunk our problems. As mentioned earlier, some parts of a problem may lend themselves to AI, whereas other parts don't. So if we take the parts that lend themselves to AI and implement an AI solution for those and keep the other parts in a more traditional approach, then we can maybe get the best of both worlds. In cases where the AI models seem to be falling short because they simply don't know enough about the IBMI or RPG or sign on or some technology that's a little bit more niche, then we are looking to buttress their skills with fine tuning. We have a lot of code, we have a lot of knowledge of these legacy systems, we have a lot of engineers who are experts in this area. And so if we harvest their ability and marry that up with the models that are there, we are extracting value in that way as well. And we're giving our developers a somewhat unusual hardware. Your standard developer laptop doesn't work for AI experimentation. There's just not enough disk, there's not enough processor. You need the fancy GPUs. So we've deployed some of these machines in our data center in order to accelerate our iteration and exploration in this space. Thank you for your attention. This has been a lightning review of AI. If you have any questions or comments or want to dig deeper into any one of these topics, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.